Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another exciting week of Español. Uh, this week, we'll be exploring Capítulo 10, titled En el consultorio, or in the doctor's office. Um, some learning objectives to guide our thought process this week. My goal is that after successfully completing this chapter, you'll be able to identify some vocabulary related to general health, parts of the body, sickness, symptoms, medicine, and the doctor's office. Um, some grammar points in this chapter. We'll be working on the imperfect tense, which is the second of the two past tenses in Espanol. We'll also be discussing constructions that involve se in Spanish and using some adverbs in context as well. Additionally, I hope that you'll be able to describe some medical conditions and symptoms and create some sentences using the imperfect tense in order to describe your past. So that is our goal. As always, we'll get started with some vocabulario. So if you would, just kind of take a look at these and then we'll repeat them together. So we start with el corazón, the heart, el cuerpo, the body, el estómago, the stomach, el hueso, a bone, la rodilla, one's knee, el tobillo, the ankle, la pierna, the leg, el pie, the foot, la cabeza, the head, la garganta, the throat, el cuello, the neck, el brazo, the arm, el dedo, the finger, la oreja, the ear, el ojo, the eye, la nariz, the nose, and la boca, the mouth. So if you would, just take a moment to pronounce these with me. Let's make sure you know how to say them. We'll start with el corazón, el cuerpo, el estómago, el hueso, la rodilla, el tobillo, la pierna, el pie, la cabeza, la garganta, that's a fun word, el cuello, el brazo, el dedo, la oreja, el ojo, la nariz, and la boca. Awesome. So these are some vocab words. We also begin to examine in a little bit more detail about one's health, la salud. Fun fact about the word salud, it actually has three meanings in Spanish. Salud can mean cheers, salud can mean bless you, or salud can mean health. So interesting combination of words there. Our first word on the list is el accidente, the accident. La clínica, the clinic. We've also already talked about el consultorio, the title of this chapter, the doctor's office. Lots of cognates here, which is helpful. El doctor, the doctor. El enfermero, the nurse, or a female nurse, la enfermera. El examen médico, a medical exam or a physical we say. El hospital, the hospital. Remember that H is silent, so el hospital instead of el hospital, right? El hospital. La operación, the operation. El paciente or la paciente, depending on male or female patient. La radiografía, an x-ray, like radiography. La sala de emergencias, literally the living room of emergencies, the emergency room. We've already talked about salud. Over here, you'll never guess, but a dentista is a dentist. That's right. Be careful. Dentista ends in an A, even though it is a masculine word. El dentista is a male dentist, and la dentista would be a female dentist. All right. So, some other words. We'll begin with some medicamentos, some medications. So over here on the right, you have this giant bottle of aspirina, which is aspirin, aspirina, and it says adios a los dolores, adios a los dolores, goodbye to pains. El antibiótico, an antibiotic. El medicamento, we already talked about, was medication. La medicina, medicine. Las pastillas are pills. And la receta, the prescription. Over on the left, you see a farmacia. La farmacia is the pharmacy. This poor little sick girl here, her mamá has to tomarle la temperatura a ella. So to take her temperature, tomarle la temperatura a alguien, to take someone's temperature. Be very careful with your adjectives in this chapter. The first one listed is embarazada. Embarazada looks like it would mean embarrassed. And I can't tell you how many students have come up and said, "Oh, señor, estoy muy embarazada." I'm very embarrassed, but they're actually saying estoy muy embarazada. I'm very pregnant. So be careful. Embarazada is pregnant, not embarrassed. It's a false cognate. We have grave. Grave means grave or serious. Médico or médica, it means it's involved medically. Saludable, healthy, or sano, also healthy. All right, some common verbs that we see in this chapter. We have caerse, which is to fall. Doler, to hurt, and doler does have a stem change from O to UE. Enfermarse, to get sick. Estar enfermo, to be sick. Lastimarse is to injure, and you can insert really any body part there you'd like. Lastimarse el pie, to injure your foot. Lastimarse el brazo, to injure your arm. Poner una inyección, to give an injection to someone. Recetear, to prescribe, like a receta was a prescription. Romperse is to break, and you can follow this one also with any body part. So romperse la pierna, to break one's leg. Romperse el brazo, to break one's arm. Romperse la nariz, to break one's nose. Sacarse una muela is to have a tooth pulled, or literally to have a molar pulled. Sacarse una muela. Ser alérgico is to be allergic to. Tener fiebre, to have a fever. Torcerse. Torcerse is to sprain. So torcerse el tobillo, to sprain your ankle. It does have a stem change from O to UE, so tuerco is the O form. Toser is to cough. And then over here we have estornudar, to sneeze. Estornudar. Over on the left we have some enfermedades, some sicknesses, y los síntomas, some symptoms. We have el dolor is a pain in general, and we could specify el dolor de cabeza, a headache, el dolor de garganta, throat ache, or a sore throat, we might say. Throat ache just didn't sound right. La enfermedad, an illness. La gripe, the flu. La infección, an infection. El resfriado, a cold. It actually kind of has the word frío in there almost. El resfriado, the cold. El síntoma, a symptom. La tos, the cough. And then to say that you're congested, we say congestionado, congestionado. Or you're dizzy, mareado. Mareado can also mean nauseated as well, in addition to dizzy, so mareado. So these are some various words you see. Let's just take a moment and practice saying these out loud as well, and give you some pronunciation practice. So repeat after me, por favor, repitan. El dolor de cabeza, la enfermedad, la gripe, la infección, el resfriado, el síntoma, la tos, congestionado, mareado, caerse, doler, enfermarse, estar enfermo, lastimarse, poner una inyección, recetar, romperse, sacarse una muela, ser alérgico, tener fiebre, torcerse, toser, estornudar. Awesome. All right, so you've got those vocab words down. It's time to practice. So I want to know, ¿qué partes de cuerpo usas? What parts of your body do you use? So it's going to give you a verb, and you're going to tell me what you use for that verb. So for example, número uno, we're given conducir. We know that conducir means to drive. So I would say, para conducir, in order to drive, usamos los ojos, we use our eyes, las piernas, our legs, los pies, our feet, los brazos, our arms, and las manos, our hands. Now, be very careful with body parts in Spanish. You never use your possessive adjective. So you're tempted to say like mis ojos, my eyes, or mis piernas, my legs. We don't do that. We always use the definite article, el, la, los, or las, when referring to our body parts. So let's try another one. In número dos, we're given the verb caminar, and we know that caminar means to walk. Well, in order to walk, you need your feet, you need your legs. So we would say, para caminar, usamos, we use, and then we need the feet, los pies, and our legs, y las piernas. All right, I'd like for you to take a moment, pause your audio, and please give numbers 3 through 8 a try. See how you do. All right, let's check it out. In número tres, the verb we're given is toser. Toser means to cough. So in order to cough, you use a lot of different body parts. I said, para toser, usamos los pulmones, we use our lungs, los brazos, our arms, las manos, our hands, hopefully you cover your mouth with your hands, y la boca, naturally. La boca, your mouth, as you're coughing and the air's coming out. Número cuatro, we have comer arroz con pollo, to eat some rice and chicken. Well, to eat arroz con pollo, you probably need your mouth and maybe your hand in order to move the fork, maybe even your fingers. So, para comer arroz con pollo, to eat rice and chicken, usamos, we use, and we use las manos, our hands, la boca, our mouth, los dientes, our teeth, and we can even add our fingers, y los dedos. Okay, número cinco. Para comprar un perfume, to buy some perfume. Gosh, well, what do you need to buy perfume? Para comprar un perfume, we need a nose to smell it, right? So para comprar un perfume, usamos the nose? Sí, la nariz, excellent. All right, so the goal here is just to give you a little bit of practice. Hopefully you're beginning to feel better about your vocab. Before we hop right into our grammatica, part one, which is about the imperfect tense, the second of the two past tenses, let's throw back for a moment to talk about something you already know, your prior knowledge. So in this case, we learned in Español Uno how to conjugate verbs in the present tense. You were given a verb like hablar, to speak, and you conjugated it by chopping off your AR, hobbling on down with your stem, and then adding back those endings, o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. So I talk, you talk, he talks, etc. in the present. We also learned how to do the same thing for ER verbs. So we have comer, to eat. You chopped off your ER, you carry down the stem, C-O-M, and you added your new endings, o, es, e, hemos, es, and en for the present tense. So I eat, you eat, he or she eats, etc. in the present. We did the same for IR verbs. We chopped off our IR, carried down the stem, escrib, and added those endings, o, es, imos, is, and en. So I write, you write, he or she writes, etc. And then in Español dos, we added the preterite tense, the first of the two past tenses. We took hablar, we chopped off our AR still, hobbled on down, but this time we added preterite endings. Hablé, hablaste, habló, hablamos, hablastes, hablaron. So I spoke, you spoke, he or she spoke, etc. We also did the same for ER and IR verbs, which share the same set of endings. We chopped off our ER, we carried on the COM, and this time we added E, iste, io, imos, istes, and dieron. So I ate, you ate, he or she ate, we ate, y'all ate, and they ate, going all the way through. And of course, for IR verbs, these were the same. Iste, io, imos, istes, and dieron. So you already knew about the present tense. You learned about the preterite earlier in Español dos. Now we're going to add the imperfect tense. So you can probably guess the process is similar. You chop off your AR, you carry down your stem, HABL, hobble on down. This time we just have new endings. And the imperfect, by the way, is usually translated as used to, or sometimes as was or were. So we add these new endings, aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, and aban. And our translations here are things like I used to talk, you used to talk, he or she used to talk. In some cases, also, we translate it as was or were. So I was talking, hablaba. You were talking, hablabas. He or she was talking, hablaba. We were talking, hablábamos. You all in Spain were talking, hablabais. And they were talking, hablaban. So the imperfect of hablar. You can do the same. ER and IR verbs do share the same endings here as well. So just like with the preterite, we're going to chop off our ER in comer. We're going to come on down with the COM. And then we go through and we add our new endings, which in this case are ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, and ian. And in this situation again, I used to eat, you used to eat, he or she used to eat, or I was eating, you were eating, he or she was eating, etc. And then again, same for IR verbs, chop off your IR, carry down the escrib. We have the exact same endings as we had for our ER verbs. So escribía, escribías, escribía, escribíamos, escribíais, and escribían. These are your various conjugations of the verb escribir. So I used to talk, I used to write, you used to write, he or she used to write, etc. So, gosh, senor, there's 2 past tenses. Wow, okay. Yes, so the good news, though, is that the imperfect, in my opinion, is the easiest of the 2 past tenses because there are not nearly as many irregulars. With the preterite, you've got car-gar-zar verbs, you've got those stem-changing sandal verbs, you got your song words, the U group, the J group, the I group, the UV group. There's a lot. In the imperfect, there's only 3 verbs that are irregular that you have to know. Those verbs are ir, ser, and ver, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. There's no stem changers whatsoever in the imperfect, nothing you have to worry about there. And the big thing that I want you to start focusing on is that the imperfect is used for past habits or routines, things that are like in progress, or things that we don't really know like when they happen. They didn't happen at a particular time necessarily. So let's take a look at some of these irregulars in the imperfect. So I already told you there's no stem changers. So unlike the verb doler in the present where you're like, oh, me duele, it hurts me, me duele el pie, my foot hurts, or me duele el ojo, my eye hurts. In the imperfect, there are no stem changers. Me dolían los pies, my feet were hurting, me dolían. Right? We didn't change the O to a UE or anything like that. No stem changers in the imperfect, which is so nice. You also already know about the verb haber, which is another form of a being verb, an auxiliary verb. In the present tense, haber became I, and it meant there is or there are. In the preterite, haber became hubo, there was or there were. Here in the imperfect, haber is not irregular. You just chop off your ER and add ia. So it becomes había, and it means there used to be. Also, there was or there were. So había solo un médico, there was only one doctor, or había 2 pacientes allí, there were 2 patients there. So había. Here are those irregulars with ir, ser, and ver. Ir becomes iba, ser becomes era, and ver becomes veía. I always tell my students if you just memorize the yo form, you can kind of unlock all the others in your brain because they kind of follow the pattern of a normal like AR verb. As, amos, ais, and on, right? So if you just memorize the yo form, you can unlock the others. So iba, I used to go. Ibas, you used to go. Iba, he or she used to go. Ibamos, we used to go. Ibais, you all in Spain used to go. Iban, they used to go. Same thing for ser. Era, I used to be. Eras, you used to be. Era, he or she used to be. Éramos, we used to be. Erais, you all in Spain used to be. And eran, they used to be. Now, just be careful. Íbamos does have an accent on the I, and éramos does have an accent on the E. Those are the only 2, though. None of the others have accents. And then ver is its own little thing. Ver, honestly, is not that irregular. The weird thing that happened with ver, instead of chopping off the ER, they just kept the E and just chopped off the R. So it became veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, and veían. These are your only irregulars. There's nothing else. There's no weird rules. This is it. Nothing else. So that makes it kind of nice. So let's practice a little bit. In context, we're going to bring back some of that vocab from before and add some verbs in the imperfect. Just be careful. Some of these do repeat. This particular reading passage is about la salud, or the health. And in the boxes, you have a few different options to choose from. We have caerse, to fall, doler, to hurt, Enfermarse, to get sick. Esperar, to hope or to wait. Estar, to be. Estornudar, to sneeze. Mirar, to look. Poder, to be able to. Querer, to want. Sentirse, to feel. Tener, to have. And toser, to cough. All right, so as we take a look at these, essentially, you're just figuring out which verb best completes the sentence and then conjugating it in the imperfect tense. So for example, Ana blank el termómetro con tanta fiebre no blank leerlo. So Ana blanked the thermometer, el termómetro, but con tanta fiebre no blank leerlo. So she blanked the thermometer, but with so much fever, she blanked to read it. So she was looking at that thermometer, but with so much fever, she was not able to read it. So she was looking. We're going to take this verb mirar, was or were. We know we're using the imperfect. So we chop off our AR and mirar, and we say that Ana miraba el termómetro. She was looking at the thermometer. But with so much fever, she wasn't able, she couldn't read it. So we take poder, she wasn't able, and we say that no podía leerlo. She wasn't able to read it. Okay, let's try another one. Número dos. El paciente blank, mientras la enfermera blank muy ocupada atendiendo a otros pacientes. So the patient blank, while the nurse was very busy attending to other patients. So the patient was waiting while the nurse was very busy attending to other patients. So the patient was waiting. We know the verb for to wait up here is esperar. To say the patient that he was waiting, we're going to chop off our AR and esperar, and we should add back aba. El paciente esperaba. He was waiting. Mientras la enfermera, while she was very busy, that's her condition, we're using the verb estar. So while the nurse was very busy, la enfermera estaba muy ocupada. So again, esperaba and estaba, always ending there in aba for AR verbs and ia for ER verbs. All right, número tres. Lorenzo blank, dolor de muelas, pero no blank ir al dentista porque tenía miedo. So Lorenzo blank, pain of the tooth. He blank a toothache, but no blank ir al dentista porque tenía miedo. So he blanked a toothache, but he blanked to go to the dentist because he was afraid. So Lorenzo had a toothache, but he wasn't able to go to the dentist. So número tres, he had a toothache. We're going to take the verb tener, chop off our ER, and say that Lorenzo tenía dolor de muelas. He had a toothache, but he wasn't able to go. Again, we want to use the verb poder to say he wasn't able, pero no podía ir al dentista porque tenía miedo. He wasn't able to go. Also, you could say he didn't want to go to the dentist because he was afraid. Using the verb querer, no querría ir al dentista porque tenía miedo. I would take either one there, querría or podía. Wasn't able or didn't want to. Okay, awesome. Número cuatro. Paco y Luis blank dolor de estómago y blank unas pastillas para el dolor. So Paco and Luis blank stomach pain and blank some pills for the pain. So Paco and Luis, they had some stomach pain. So again, using the verb tener to say they had some stomach pain. Paco y Luis tenían, they had dolor de estómago, and blank some pills for the pain. Well, they blank some pills. It makes the most sense here to say they wanted some pills. Querían unas pastillas para el dolor. Now, if to take were a verb, that might be a better option, but it wasn't an option in their word bank. So they wanted some pills. Querían unas pastillas. Número cinco. Le blank la cabeza y blank mareado. So something the head and something dizzy. So her head was hurting and she was feeling dizzy. Okay, so her head was hurting. We're going to take that verb to hurt from our word bank, which up here is doler. So it was hurting. We're going to chop off our ER and say that le dolía la cabeza. Her head was hurting. And you could say either she felt dizzy or just she was dizzy. I'm going to go with she felt dizzy. So we're going to take this verb sentirse. We're going to move our se to the front and chop off our ir and sentir. She felt dizzy. Se sentía mareado. You could also just say she was dizzy. Estaba mareado. That would work here as well. And número 6. Luisa blank siempre porque era alérgica al polen. So Luisa blanked always because she was allergic to pollen. Well, if she's allergic to pollen, she's probably sneezing. So we're going to take that verb estornudar, chop off our AR, and say that Luisa estornudaba. She was sneezing a lot because she was allergic to the pollen. Okay, we seem like we're doing well with the imperfect. As far as its conjugations, let's talk a little bit about why it's used. And we'll spend a lot more time on preterite versus imperfect in chapter 11 in our next chapter. But just as a guiding kind of resource for you here, we use the imperfect usually to describe past events in a different way than the preterite. And that's because preterite events are over and done with. They have happened. Last night, I went to the movies. Yesterday, we went shopping at Johnson City Mall, whatever. But in this case, the imperfect, we don't know exactly when things happened. Or maybe they're kind of incomplete or continuing, habitual actions. So that's a big difference. Sometimes we also use the imperfect to talk about what was happening at a certain time or how something used to be. So like, man, when I was a kid, we used to eat Easy Mac every day. Or something that was happening, like I was watching TV when someone knocked on the door, right? That's what was happening. I was watching and then someone knocked on the door. We'll get into the specifics of this later, and I'll give you much better examples, and we'll talk about it in chapter 11, how to differentiate. But for now, I just mostly care about you being able to conjugate in the imperfect and understanding that it's the second of the two past tenses. There's also some certain expressions that we use for the imperfect for like repeated or habitual actions. And these phrases are de niño, as a child, todos los días, every day, or mientras, while. And these are trigger words. When you have to start choosing between the preterite and the imperfect next chapter, these are some trigger words that if you're having trouble or you get stuck, these are words you can use to help you. So we have de niño, as a child, todos los días, every day, and mientras, while, expressing those repeated or habitual actions. Here are some other examples of uses of the imperfect. We have those habitual actions. Íbamos al parque los domingos. We used to go to the park on Sundays. Well, when exactly did we go? Which Sundays? We don't know. It's kind of unclear. So we're using the imperfect. For events or actions that were in progress. So yo leía mientras él estudiaba. So I was reading while he was studying. We both had actions that were going on at the same time. Not I read or he studied, but which would be preterite, but rather I was reading while he was studying. Simultaneous kind of actions in progress. Telling time is also an imperfect thing. So eran las 3:30. It was 3:30. If you read any stories in Spanish, like books, you'll see eran las 3:30. It was 3:30. You'll see the imperfect there. Okay, for age, los niños tenían 6 años. They were 6 years old. Age is always imperfect. Physical characteristics. Oh, él era alto y guapo. Man, he was tall and good looking. Well, we don't know how long he was tall and good looking, so imperfect, an unspecific amount of time. And finally, your mental or your emotional state. Quería mucho a su familia. He loved his family very much. That's an example of his emotional state. Okay, so this activity I included and really intended for you to do this orally. So I did type them out for you as well, so you're going to be able to see the answers. But I want you just to kind of shout out in Espanol the correct conjugations here in the imperfect of each of these verbs. So for example, the goal is for you to do it quickly and spontaneously in the imperfect. So remember your AR verbs are going to change to aba or abas or aba. Abamos, abais, aban. Your ERIR verbs are changing to ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, and ia. So I want you just quickly to kind of shout these out. So for example, if we were doing number 1, we would be like hablaba, bailaba, descansaba, corría, comía, decidía, and vivía. So I want you to try it with número 2. We're given tú and all these various expressions. So take a moment, see if you can shout them out in your, just kind of out loud, and then I will project them up in a sec. All right, awesome. If you need more time, you can always pause. But here we go. So, nadabas, encontrabas, comprendías, venías, ibas, eras, and veías. So you got those three irregulars mixed in there at the end. Let's try another one. Usted. You can go ahead and pause. Give these a try. You should have hacía, regateaba, asistía, eras, an irregular one there, paseabas, podías, and ibas, another irregular on the end. So the goal here is just that you're practicing saying these out loud and then checking your answers. So go ahead, pause yourself now. Go ahead and try 4, 5, and 6, and I'll give you all the answers at once. All right, so for nosotros, we know our ending should be habamos for AR verbs or íamos for ER verbs. So here we have éramos, tomábamos, íbamos, poníamos, seguíamos, veíamos, and pensábamos. I don't know why I tapped them in the to form for some reason there. Sorry about that. In número 5, we have ellos. You should have salían, viajaban, iban, querrían, eran, pedían, and empezaban. And number 6, in the yo form, we should have veía, estornudaba, sufría, iba, daba, era, and tosía. Again, just more conjugation practice. All right, as we move into Gramática 10.2, 10.2, we're talking about constructions with se. You already know a little bit about se constructions, actually, because you've been using the word se with reflexive pronouns, right? You took the se, you moved it to the front, and you said, él se despierta. He is waking up. We also use the se in some other ways, and I'll give you some examples. But the most common construction with se is usually with what we call in English as passive voice. So, for example, se habla español in Costa Rica. Spanish is spoken in Costa Rica. Well, we know who's speaking Spanish, right? It's the natives, it's the citizens, etc. But it doesn't specifically say that in that sentence. It just says Spanish is spoken. Se habla español. So in this case, habla literally agrees with español. Spanish is spoken in Costa Rica. Another example, se puede leer en la sala de espera. One can read in the waiting room, or you can read in the waiting room. Well, it's just very inspecific. It didn't say puedes leer, you can read. It just said one may read, se puede leer. So we refer to this as passive voice in English because it's very impersonal. That's why we call them impersonal constructions, impersonal say, because we don't really know who the person performing the action is. It's not always specified. As far as how these are conjugated, much like the verb gustar, we're always using either the third person singular or the third person plural form. So AKA always your bottom left or your bottom right boxes. So we have se vende ropa, or clothing is sold. Well, in this case, ropa is a singular noun. So we conjugated vende in the third person singular. Se vende ropa, clothing is sold. If that was plural and ropas, we would say se venden with an N, ropas. Se venden ropas, clothes are sold. Instead of se vende ropa, clothing is sold. The same is true over here. Camisas is a plural noun. So we said se venden camisas, shirts are sold. If it was just camisa without an S, we would say se vende camisa, shirt is sold, which sounds a little weird, but you get the point. You're using the singular form with singular nouns and the plural form with plural nouns. So third person singular, third person plural. You see these a lot in real life on advertisements and signs. So I've included a few from your book, and then I also took some pictures from real life just to show you. We have se prohíbe nadar. Swimming is prohibited. Well, who exactly is prohibited from swimming? We don't know. That's why it's an impersonal say expression. Or se necesitan programadores. Programmers are needed. Well, who exactly needs a programmer? Again, we don't know. Se entra por la izquierda. Enter on the left. Okay, well, who exactly is entering? Se entra, we don't know. Some other examples that you see. Se prohíbe traspasar. Trespassing is prohibited. No se permitan bicicletas y patinetas. Bicycles and skateboards are not permitted. No se permitan. Se abre el almacén a las 9. The mall opens at 9. Se abre. Se aceptan tarjetas de crédito y débito. So debit and credit cards are accepted. Notice aceptan, plural, because tarjetas de crédito y débito is a plural noun. So we use the plural form of aceptan. Okay, so just some examples. Some others. Se vende pollo. Se alquila apartamento. So chicken is sold. The apartment is for rent. And no se permiten mascotas. Pets are not permitted. You see these a lot in real life on signs and whatnot. I took this picture actually in Spain. Se preparan bocadillos. Sandwiches are prepared. In this case, instead of sandwich, they use the word bocadillo in Spain for sandwiches. So se preparen bocadillos. Sandwiches are prepared. Okay, so I want to give you a chance to practice with these, just a smidge. And you're just kind of taking what's there and turning it into an impersonal expression. So, for example, buscamos vendedores con experiencia. We're looking for salespeople with experience. So we turned that into an impersonal expression and said, se buscan vendedores con experiencia. Salespeople with experience are looked for. Let's do a few examples. Número uno, necesitamos profesores de matemáticas. We need math teachers. So we could phrase that impersonally and say that math teachers are needed. So we have multiple teachers, in this case, a plural noun, los profesores de matemáticas, and they are needed. So we know that the verb to need is necesitar, which is where necesitamos came from. So we write it as se necesitan profesores de matemáticas, or math professors, math teachers are needed. In this case, necesitan agreed with profesores, which is a plural noun. Se necesitan profesores de matemáticas. Número dos is pretty simple. It just tells us that hablamos español. We speak Spanish. Okay. Well, we can make this a little bit more impersonal by saying that Spanish is spoken here. So we take the verb hablar, to speak, and we say that Spanish is spoken. Español in this case is a singular noun. So se habla español. Spanish is spoken. Número tres, aceptamos tarjetas de crédito. We accept credit cards. Well, we could say more impersonally, credit cards are accepted. So we take the verb aceptar, to accept, and we say, se aceptan tarjetas de crédito. Credit cards are accepted. Okay, now that you've seen me do some examples for you, I'd like for you to pause your audio. Please give numbers 4, 5, and 6 a try. And when you're ready, you can unpause. Okay, número 4. Está prohibido hablar por teléfono. So talking on the phone is prohibited. Está prohibido. So we can take the verb to prohibit, prohibir, and say that talking on the phone is prohibited. Se prohíbe, from the verb prohibir, se prohíbe hablar por teléfono. I imagine you might be asking yourself the question right now, well, Señor Harrison, how do I know to use prohíbe and not prohíban? It's hablar por teléfono. It's not a singular noun or a plural noun. That's true. You also, kind of like with gustar, we also use the singular form with infinitives as well. So singular nouns and infinitives and plural nouns use the plural. Here's another example. Número 5. Vendemos libros. We sell books. Well, we could make that a little bit more impersonal and just say that books are sold. So we take books, libros. We know to sell is vender. And we can say that books are sold. Se venden libros. Again, with venden agreeing in this case with libros, a plural noun. Okay, número 6. Buscamos dentista con experiencia. We're looking for a dentist with experience. So in this case, a dentist with experience is looked for. So se busca dentista con experiencia. Se busca, since dentista is singular. All right, I think these are fairly easy, but a good thing to know and recognize in real life. We also use se. I told you that this chapter's grammar was about se constructions. So you have the impersonal se that we were just dealing with, impersonal expressions. We also have se for unplanned events, or what some people call the accidental se. And these are used to kind of just like de-emphasize the person who's doing the action, to sort of like put the emphasis on the fact that it's an accident that happened. So if you're looking for like a formula or a structure to follow, these always begin with the word se, followed by an indirect object pronoun based on the person who is affected. So that indirect object pronoun is always me, te, le, nos, os, or les, depending on who's affected. Your verb is always conjugated in the preterite, and then your subject of your sentence falls at the end. So here, as an example, we have se me cayó la pluma. Literally, to or for me, the pen dropped, or I dropped the pen. So it's an accident. I dropped the pen, but we use this accidental se expression to sort of clarify that it was an accident. So like, the pen I dropped. Se me cayó la pluma. In this case, cayó, the verb, agrees with la pluma. It was the pen that dropped, la pluma. And then me, to or for me. So I myself dropped the pen, or the pen dropped to or for me. So as I said before, you're always using the word se. Any type of indirect object pronoun, these are the words that went in front of gusta from before. So me, to or for me. Te, to or for you. Le, to or for him or her. Nos, to or for us. Os, to or for you all in Spain. And les, to or for them or to or for you all. Your verb is always conjugated in the preterite, and your subject comes at the end, and that's what your verb agrees with. So some examples and some very common verbs associated with the accidental se. We have caer, which means to drop or to fall. Dañar, to damage. Olvidar, to forget. Perder, to lose. And perder does have a stem change from E to IE. Quedar, to be left behind. And romper, to break. So some examples. Also, you, in addition to just caer, for to drop, some people use the term dejar caer, which is literally to allow to fall or to let fall, as its meaning for to drop. So like, for example, Elena dejó caer el libro. She allowed to drop the book. She dropped the book. Or el médico dejó caer la aspirina. The doctor allowed to drop the aspirin. He dropped the aspirin. These are the common verbs you're going to see. And one last thing, sometimes you may specify, you may want to show emphasis to or for whom this happened. So we use the structure a plus a noun, like a mí, a ti, a él y usted, al estudiante, or a prepositional pronoun, a mí, a ella, etc., to emphasize to or for whom this action happened. So al estudiante se le perdió la tarea. Oh my gosh, the homework was lost to the student. The student lost his homework. Al estudiante se le perdió la tarea. A mí se me olvidó ir a clase ayer. Going to class yesterday was forgotten. It was forgotten to me. A mí se me olvidó. It just kind of clarifies or emphasizes who is involved in the action. So again, you can use a noun like the student, the teacher, etc., or you can use a prepositional pronoun, a mí, a ti, a él, ella, usted, those kind of things. Okay, so as we take a look at these, I want to give you a chance to practice. So we have número uno, talking about Gabriel, dañar, to damage, and la computadora, the computer. So instead of Gabriel damaged the computer, we're trying to say that the computer was damaged to Gabriel, basically. So his computer got damaged. So we always start with a se. We know we're talking about Gabriel, which will be to or for him. So we need an indirect object pronoun referring to or for him, which in this case should be le. So se le, and then we want to take our verb dañar and make it agree with computadora. So se le, we chop off our AR in dañar. We know that computadora would be an it. So we get se le dañó la computadora. In this case, se is always there. The le agrees with the person we're talking about, which in this case was Gabriel, and dañó agreed with la computadora. So I tried to color code to help you here. So se le dañó la computadora. The computer was damaged to Gabriel. Let's try another one. Número dos. Carla y Lupe romper botellas. So Carla and Lupe broke the bottles. So basically, the bottles were broken because of Carla and Lupe. So we're going to start with the same structure you have up there at the top. So we know we need a Carla and Lupe, just given their names. A Carla and Lupe. We need the word se. We know that Carla and Lupe would be they. So our indirect object pronoun in this case should be les. And then they broke the bottles. Bottles are plural. So we're going to take romper and say that a Carla y a Lupe se les rompieron las botellas. Again, with les agreeing with Carla and Lupe, and with rompieron agreeing with las botellas. Okay, so to give you an opportunity to practice just a smidge, I'd like for you to please pause your audio and give números 3, 4, y 5 a try. When you're ready, you can unmute. Okay, let's check it out. So número 3, we're talking about Julia, and we have that Julia quedar bolsa. So Julia left the bag. So in this case, we start with her name, a Julia. We know Julia would be she, so we need the indirect object pronoun le. And then she left the bag. We know the bag is singular in this case, so we take quedar, we chop off our AR, and we conjugate it in the preterite. A Julia se le quedó la bolsa. She left the bag. Se le quedó la bolsa. Número 4. Antonio olvidar los huevos. Antonio forgot the eggs, or literally the eggs were forgotten by Antonio. So we start again with his name, Antonio. We always use the word se. And then he forgot the eggs, which is plural. A Antonio se le olvidaron los huevos. Again, in this case, le is agreeing with Antonio, and olvidaron agreeing with the eggs, los huevos. Our last one talks about Rosa, and she perder las llaves. She lost her keys. So in this case, we start with her name, a Rosa. We include the word se. Rosa, we know would be to or for her. So a Rosa se le, and we take perder and we make it agree with las llaves. So a Rosa se le perdieron las llaves. She lost her keys. Se le perdieron las llaves. Okay. The last grammar topic for this chapter talks about adverbios or adverbs. These are actually very easy and pretty fun. You already know some adverbs. Essentially, adverbs describe how, when, where actions take place. Sometimes they modify verbs, other times they modify adjectives, and sometimes even other adverbs. But you already know some adverbs, so let's start with what you know. We have bien, well, mal, badly, muy, very, nunca, never, hoy, today, siempre, always, temprano, early, ayer, yesterday, and ya, already. So these are the adverbs that you already know. Most adverbs, though, these are sort of irregular ones, the ones you already know. Most adverbs end in mente. And if they don't end in mente, you make them end in mente. So for example, let's say you have an adjective like the word lento. Lento. The first thing you're going to do, lento means slow. You're going to take lento and you're going to change it to the feminine form. So instead of lento, we get lenta. Pretty easy. And then we add mente. So instead of slow, we get slowly, lentamente. Other examples, we have fabuloso, fabulous. So we make it feminine, fabulosa, and we add mente, fabulosamente, fabulously. Now, gosh, what happens if we can't change its gender? What happens if it doesn't have a feminine form? Like, for example, enorme. Enorme does not have a feminine form. There's no enorma or anything like that. It's just enorme. So in that case, we just add mente, enormemente. Feliz, happy, same thing. In this case, there's no feminine form. It doesn't end in a, so we just add mente. Felizmente, happily. So basically the rule here is if your word is masculine, if it ends in an O, then make it feminine and then add mente. For everything else, just add mente. So there's some common ones up here. Verdaderamente, truly or really. Lentamente, slowly. Generalmente, generally. Or simplemente, simply. Just kind of taking those and adding mente to the end. Generally speaking, the adverbs that end in mente usually follow the verb. Whereas the other adjectives, the ones you already knew from the beginning, if those adverbs, they're usually modifying an adjective or modifying another adverb, those come in front of the word usually. So I don't think this is too complicated to understand because we do the same thing in English. So if you kind of think about where you would put it in English, that may help you. So for example, Javier dibuja maravillosamente. Javier draws marvelously. We wouldn't say Javier marvelously draws. No, he draws marvelously. Another example, Inés está casi siempre ocupada. Inés is almost always busy. It would sound weird to say like Inés is busy almost always, like she almost always is busy. So basically the ones that end in mente are going to come after your verb. The ones that do not end in mente are going to come in front of whatever word it is they're modifying, whether that's an adjective or an adverb, whatever verb that may be. Okay? So we'll give you some practice, don't worry. Here are some more common adverbs and adverbial expressions that you will see. We have a menudo, which means often, a tiempo, on time, a veces, sometimes, además, also or furthermore, besides, apenas, hardly or scarcely, así, like so, or like this, bastante, enough or quite, casi, almost, con frecuencia, with frequency, de vez en cuando, every once in a while or from time to time, menos, less, muchas veces, a lot or literally many times, poco, little, por lo menos, at least, and pronto, soon. These are your adverbs that you know. So I just want to give you a chance to transform these adverbs, transform these adjectives into adverbs. So remember, if it is masculine, you're going to make it feminine and then add mente. If it's doesn't have a gender, or if it's already feminine, then you just add mente. So for example, we have constante, constant. So to say constantly, it ends in an E, we can't make it feminine, we just add mente. Constantemente, constantemente. Number 3 gives us gradual, gradual. To say gradually, again, it just ends in an L, it's not feminine, not masculine, so we just add mente, gradualmente. Okay, since these are kind of easy, I put them all in one slide. So I want you to pause your audio and give these a try, and then we'll check our answers. All right, let's see how you're doing. So we have constantemente, gradualmente. For perfecto, it ends in an O, it's masculine. So first we're going to make it feminine, perfecta, and then we add mente, perfectamente. Número 5 gives us real or real. So to say really, we have realmente, we just add mente, since it didn't end in an A. Frecuente, same thing, just add mente, frecuentemente. Tranquilo is masculine, so we first need to make it feminine, tranquila, and we need to add mente, tranquilamente. Número 8 gives us regular or regular. So to say regularly, we get regularmente. Número 9, maravilloso, marvelous. So to say marvelously, maravillosamente. We made it feminine first and then added mente. Number 10, normal, already ends in a consonant, so normalmente. Básico, we have to make feminine, básica, and then mente, básicamente, basically. And número 12, afortunado, we have to make feminine, afortunada, and then add mente, afortunadamente. So that's it. That's everything for your adverbs. And this chapter does not have a 4th grammar point, so you have a little bit of a shorter video. So guys, as always, if you're confused on something or you just have a question about an activity, whatever it may be, you can always drop me an email. I am totally here to help you every step of the way. So please do not hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to working with you guys. Have a wonderful day. Gracias. Adios. Ciao.